Hi guys, welcome back to Java Full Stack Made Easy, and this is the session 63 where we will talk about Angular routing once again. And in the previous session also we have spoke about configuring the default route path, error path, and the child configurations. So in this case we will be talking about the other Angular routing functionalities. So without wasting time, let's get into the code part. So the last example that I have shared with you was about child route configuration. So let's just hit a ng serve and understand what exactly we have done in our previous example. Fine, so this was my last example where I was displaying this home component and everything. Like for example, if I type in the home, so it was displaying me the home and the other details as well. So I told you that instead of we typing it manually, like about or maybe service, we can also go for the configuration provided by uh, an HTML file, right? So that generally that we used to implement into our HTML, right, where we provide a router link and then used to work on the router link accordingly. So in this example, let us first finish off this by providing in the HTML for this same, and after that we will be configuring the other routing stuff. So let's go ahead and first I will go to the app.html and then provide in the links to navigate to home, about, contact, and services. So let's go for an A, router links, and before going to directly the router links, let's organize it into an unordered list so that we get a better look and feel of the same. So it will be a list item. Now within a list item I want to have an anchor tag, and that actually should have a router link. Fine, and it should be navigated to home. Similarly, a text to display that. So we have home, then about, and then we have contact. You can call it as contact us because it is just a visible text, and lastly the services, which will call it as our services. Let's just save it and check it now. So you can see that it displays home, about, contact, and our services. So whatever about us, let's check what is the path for about should go to the about component. Okay, typo, let's save it. It should also take me to the about us component. So everything is fine. So when I click on the our services, so it takes me to the our services and the child below this. So none of the child of the services is being displayed now, and also I don't have any option for the child to be selected, whether I'm selecting the car rent, car wash, or painting, right? So that has to be displayed under the services. So this unordered list that I have created, I will be creating the same under the services as well, so that it shows me this particular list once the services is opened. And here we have only three options, which is the car rent, car wash. Let me just reconfirm the same. So I have car wash, car rent, and car paint, and the car paint. So let's call it as rent a car, wash your car, and then paint your car. Let's save it, and now you can see that. So if I go to home, it will show me the home component. If I go to about, it shows me about component. When I click on the services, so it shows me the service component, and the child component goes here. So rent a car, so you can see that car rent works, car wash, paint your car. So that way we can work with the child configurations. So these this is how you create a HTML page for the user to access your child component, and the child components will only be shown in this way. So now you can also notice that when I'm clicking on this our services, so none of the child component is visible to me by default. So there is no default configuration for the child component, right? So if you remember, we provided in some default configurations in our previous sessions, right? So if we write nothing and redirect it, like for example, so in app routing module, so we used to have things like this, wherein we used to provide in the path, and the path was the default path like this, right? And then we used to provide a redirect to, if nothing is given, redirect it to what, let's say home. Home is my first component that has to be displayed, and the uh, path matching should be full so that our Angular does not get confused, right? So this is what we used to do before. Okay, and the path default, let's save it. So very first thing is, when I open this 4200, so since I have a default configuration for home, it will show me home. And when I go to our services, at that time no child component is being displayed here. So if I want to have a default child configuration also, let's check, can we actually provide in the default child configuration as well when it comes to the children, right? So here is the path. I want this to be the car paint. Okay, so let's save it, and there we go. And when I go home, it shows me home. When I click on our services, you can see that the child component car paint works over here. So that way you can even configure the error paths and everything for the child components as well. So let me just give you this configuration first, and this is our day 63. Let's call it as demo 1 HTML for child route configurations. So this is my app.html where I have provided you the detail about this, and before that I will just go for app dash routing dot module dot TypeScript. Alright, and then the app.html that shows me the parent component links, then the services.html, which is in fact service.html. That's it. Fine. So that's how we configure the child routing, and we also provide in the way for a user to go for the HTML links and everything, right? So now the next thing is that, so up to now whatever we have done is we are navigating from an HTML link itself, but there could be a situation where we have to navigate to another component through the TypeScript. Now what situation it can be, it could be where we have to navigate through a TypeScript page. For example, let's say that I have created a login page. Okay, let's consider this example now. Suppose I have created a login page, and in the login page, suppose this is login HTML, and if I create two fields here for the user to provide in a login, that is username and the password. So let's just call it as user ID and then the password. Then I will provide a user with a button for logging into my application. So user will have this button called as login. Okay, I cannot go ahead and give a router link for this, right? So why is that? That is because if I give a router link and after this, let's say I'm connecting it to a home component or something, fine. So from here it goes to a home.html, home component, fine. So if suppose I'm using a router link, at that time I have to use the router link in HTML itself, like we have been doing that from a long time. So you can see that HTML router links are used here in the HTML page, not in the TypeScript. But what I want here is that I want a correct user and the correct password. So when a user enters the user ID and the password, I actually want to validate this, and this validation obviously happens validate user, right? And upon the correct user, if we have the correct user at that time, login and redirect to home, right? That's one thing. Correct user should go there, and wrong user stay on the same page, right? So this is what we have to do. If suppose I provide in the router links here itself, every time, irrespective whether the user is correct or wrong, it will take me to the home HTML itself. So this validation happens in what? It happens in login dot TypeScript, right? So now I have to navigate to an HTML page, not through an HTML page, but through a TypeScript, where in the TypeScript I have to first validate it, and if the validation passes, then only it has to be redirected. So think of this example, and we will be implementing the exact same thing into our Angular as well. So router links will not come into picture here, right? Router links will not be useful in such cases. So for that, first of all, what I'm going to do is I will be implementing the very first thing, that is ng generate component, the login component. So I want a login component for this. So once I get this login component, so from this login component I will be implementing the other details, other stuffs. So now that I have this login component being included here, so what I will do is I will first design the login component to have these two fields and a login button that will actually be mapped to the username and the password, and a validate function in the login TypeScript. So let's go ahead and design that. So you have the login. I'll go to login.html. As of now, my focus is not on the design. That's why I'm not implementing any CSS stuff for this. So I'll have an input type for this. Input type is gonna be text. Okay, and I will bind this to something like a username or something. So for providing the two-way data binding, banana in a box and ng model has to be used, because I have already implemented a, oh, in this case I did not implement a forms module because it's a new Angular project. So what I'm gonna do is I'll go to the app.module.typescript, and within the app.module.typescript I have to include the forms module, right? So that's something which we have already learned before. So I included a forms module. So now this ng model should work, and the ng model will go with the username. That would be something I'll be creating later in the TypeScript. So similarly, if I want, I can even put a placeholder. Let's call it as a username, so that a user can enter a username, and similarly there will be another placeholder for password, and user can enter the password and get into this. All right, so things look good now, and there will be a password or pass something. Okay, and this is gonna be of what type? Input type should be password. As of now, just for uh, a password to be visible for you, I'm keeping it as input type is equal to text itself. So you can actually make it a input type as password, and then I will create a button. Upon click of that button, login should happen. Okay, so upon click, that means the click event I am tracking. So click is equal to, let's call it as validate login, or just a validate. Okay, so let's call it as validate login, and let's call the button as login. So there should be a login, there should be a password variable in the TypeScript. So let's go to the login.typescript, and here we need to first create two variables and the function. So this will be my validate login, and two variables, that is username has to be created. As of now that is empty, and then password has to be created, which again is empty as for now. So in the login, what should happen is I have to check whether the user is a valid user or not. So if it is a valid user, then do something. If it is an invalid user, do something else. So for example, as of now, I'll just generate an alert to check whether the user is valid or not. And since I don't have any database or anything connected to it from where I can get the valid user, so I'll hard code the things as for now. In future tutorials, I'll show you how do you connect it to the database and then provide a valid login and all that. So in this case, I'm just assuming that this dot username equal to if suppose the valid user is admin or something, okay, and the password, let's keep it as admin, or maybe admin123, or in the password that you want, and the password will be equal to the what admin itself. So if the user and the password both are admin, or maybe let's say password is admin123, so this is the valid user and the password. So in that case, I will just say alert valid user, and in all the other cases I'm just gonna alert it as invalid user, invalid user. Fine. So things look good now, and what I will do is I'll go to the app routing module.typescript, and in the app routing module.typescript, I'm gonna create one more object, and that will be for login, and it redirects me to the login component is login, and this should be login, and the first component that is getting displayed to me has to be login for me. So I'll just save it, and let's go to the browser and see that first. So once, suppose if I hit 4200, the default URL, so it should take me to login. That shows me login works. That's fine. I have to actually save everything, so let's just save all. So login component is being displayed to me, looks good. So now what I will do is, so whenever I want to give a login like an admin, and then the admin123, it should show me that it is a valid login. So it says valid user, that looks good. Fine. Similarly, now what I have is I will give a wrong user detail. Okay, so it shows me invalid user. So now what I want is, if a valid user is given, at that time I should see the home component, okay, and then the about, contact, our services, and all those components has to be shown to me. Fine. So upon the default login, I'll get this. Okay, so what needs to be done now? A placeholder is gone for this, so let's add a placeholder user name. Okay, so let's save it, and then what I will do is, if suppose there is a valid user login, then come down to the TypeScript, you validate it, and now redirect it to the valid user. So how am I going to redirect it to the valid user? So for redirecting it to the valid user, we have to use a built-in Angular service called as the router service. So obviously, so there is a built-in service. That means if I want to inject any of the service, we always go for the constructor, right? And then we inject it here. So this is gonna be our private. The router service is something that we are looking for, right? So router, Angular router, it comes from the Angular router. Fine. So now what I will simply do is valid user, and this dot the router service, which is a built-in service, dot there is a function called as navigate. So by using this navigate function, we can navigate programmatically to any of the component that we like. So which component we want to redirect to? So the component would be what? The component is gonna be the home component. Fine. This is where I want to be redirected. So I'll simply say save, and if not, like if there is an invalid user, so I'll just keep it as it is. Okay, so that the user stays in here itself. So let's go now and check. So I'll give a invalid user details and click on login. It says invalid user, so it does not redirect me anywhere. Now I go for admin, and then I go for admin123, and I hit on login. Now it says valid user, so when I click OK, so you can see that it takes me to the home component. So that way we can actually create this. Fine. And also you might be thinking, like when I go for the login, that means once the login is created, so at that time, why is this home, about us, contact us, and our services are created, right? So to resolve this particular problem, what you can actually do is you can create a login on the main component, and then upon successful login you can create another component which is going to be a child component, and on the child you can create this home, about, contact, and our services. Like for our services I have created this, right? So you can create a login as login on the main component. On the root component you just create the login, the design of the login should be there on the root, and then you create the main component, and upon the main component you can keep creating this home, about, contact, and everything. So this is just about how you organize your component. So I hope but our main goal was about uh, the navigate function. So this is how you programmatically navigate to any of the component of your choice. So I will share everything that I have done in here. So very first thing that I did was I configured this sorry yeah, I have configured this login so that our application redirects to login. So I'll give you that. So let's add a new file, demo2, let's call it as login, demo2 login validate using navigate. Okay, so this is my app dash routing dot module dot typescript. So here only one thing is configured, that is the login is configured. That's a new thing, and the default configuration is provided for the login. And after that, yeah, I should also be giving you the command that I used for this, which is I did a ng generate component, the login component for this, right? And login.html, login.typescript. Login.html contains two fields there. So let's go to login.html. There we go. And then the login.typescript. Also, you need to ensure what? You need to ensure you have included a forms module, because you are having the two-way data binding implemented here. So once the two-way data binding implemented here, then you have to have the forms module imported. So that's one more file that I have changed. So I hope you this is clear to you. So that's how we can programmatically navigate to any of the page of our choice. Similarly, you might have seen in some of the websites that when a user logs in, the name of the user will be actually displayed, like hi user and all that, right? So whatever user is logged in here, for example, in this case, when I go to this login, there is this admin user, right? So when I have this admin user and admin 123, what I actually want is whatever data is entered here as the admin. So I should display here welcome admin instead of homeworks. I want to display welcome admin or something I want to display here, but I want to get that get the value of that particular variable. The login user ID is something that I'm looking for. In this case, it is just admin, so I can hard code it, but there is a possibility that there can be more than one user, right? So there can be an admin or there can be a normal user as well. So let us have a normal user implemented first in our application, and then we will learn how do we track that. So now there is an if. Let's implement an else if for the same, so that we can have another user, else if. So let's have a user as well. The name of the user is user itself, and the password is gonna be user123 or something. Okay, all right. So both will redirect to home page, right? In both the cases I'm going to the home page. Now what I actually want is I want the name of this user, whether it is admin or maybe a user, should be given to the home page. So how do I do that, and what is it? That is called as the path parameter, and you see how do you include the path parameters. You can see that this navigate function actually takes up what? It takes up the array. So the first argument is the URL on which you are redirecting. The next arguments, the second, third, fourth, all that arguments will just be what? It will be the path parameters itself. So here you want to pass in what? You want to pass in the admin, right? So in this case we can simply write it as admin or something, or since this dot username equal, the username will be entered, so you can simply say this dot username. Whatever is entered, you give it to the home page. So this dot user is something which I am giving to the next page. I could have directly written a admin here, because it is hard coded, and user here. Why I'm not doing that in real time? It might not just be a user or admin, it will just be the valid user. So for the valid user, whatever username is given, that username has to be given to the second page. So just by doing this, it is not enough. For path parameters, first thing is that you have to pass in the parameters, and the second thing is that you have to also configure your routes in such a way that it accepts the path parameter. So in this case, obviously I'm passing in the path parameters, but I'm not allowing the user, or say allowing my path parameters to be configured. So let us first check what happens if I do this, whether the path parameters will be taken or not. Okay, so that way we can actually understand whether the path parameters will be taken or not. So in this case, what I will simply do is I will try and I'll try and log in and check it first. So let's go to the login, 4200 login. So here I will give a valid user admin and admin 123. So I'll click on login. That is a valid user. So upon clicking a valid user, so it should actually take me to what? It should take me to the home, right? So when it is not taking me to the home component, but it is throwing me an error saying that you're providing a path parameter home/admin. That path is not configured, right? So we have configured it as just home/admin is not configured. So this is a path parameter that is coming up from the user, which you have added in here. So you are passing in home, and then you are going for this dot user. So that path parameter is added. So if you want to add more path parameters, you can simply go for what? Put just a comma here and then pass in something like hello. So it will be what? Home and then admin/hello it will be. So you will see it here, admin 123. So if I click login, it is a valid login. The path is gonna be what? Home slash, okay, I think it is not, yeah, saved yet, comma hello. So this path is not there, right? Login. So these paths are not configured. We have to configure the path. So let's see how are we going to configure these paths so that the user can be read. So for that, what we have to do is we have to configure the routing here. So the path is what? Home/something, right? So from login, we are passing that. So what we have to do is we have to simply say this is going to the home, and the home accepts some path parameter. So to provide in the path parameters, we simply say /colon whatever path parameter you want to pass in, that path parameter has to be given. So the name of the path parameter has to be given. So I will give any path parameter name. Let's call it as user ID or something. So I'll give it as user ID and save it. Now that I have saved this, let's once again do a admin and admin 123. So you will notice that it is a valid user. It takes me to the homework, and also you can notice home/admin now is a valid address, right? So in the previous case it was not configured properly, that is why it was not taking me to that. Now that it is configured very perfectly, so it is taking me to home works, right? So this is how we add the path parameter. So this is the first thing where we are adding the path parameter, and there is one more thing, that is reading those path parameters, right? So we have not still yet read those path parameters. So let's see how are we going to read the path parameters. So before I read the path parameters, I will first share you how do you add the path parameters. So in this case, what did I do? I actually went into the login dot TypeScript, and I changed the login dot TypeScript. So let me just give this as demo 3 to you. Demo 3, adding path parameters. So for adding the path parameters, we have to, yeah, we'll have a login dot TypeScript where we are adding this path parameters. You can see that navigate, and then there is an extra parameter pass, this dot username, this dot username. That's the parameter pass. And for that we should make our app dot app dash routing dot module dot TypeScript ready to accept those parameters. So that's what I have configured here. Fine. So path parameters are added. These are the only two files that I have configured. Now the next thing will be, how do I read this path parameters? So where is this redirected? It is redirected to home. And now reading the path parameters, I will go to the home component, right? So in the home component, I have to read this path parameters. So here I come down to the home component, and in the home component, I want to read this path parameters. Let's see how are we going to read the path parameters. So for reading the path parameters, we need another service provided, the built-in service in Angular, which is going to be the activated route. So in the previous example where we were adding the path parameters, we use what? We use the route for navigate, and here once again the constructor and a private variable to inject the dependency. Let's call it as activated ACTV or something. Activated route is something which I'm looking for. So activated route again from Angular core is what I'm looking for. So this is a constructor where we are reading the path parameters. Now what I will do is I will need one more thing from Angular, that is going to be our implements on init. Okay, so this is the this is something new that I am implementing for you, right? So on init, so let's go for an ng on init. So that error is gone. So this on init is actually called as a life cycle hook in Angular. So life cycle hook, what is the use of this life cycle use, or what is the purpose of using this life cycle hook? What exactly is ng on init, right? So ng on init is a life cycle hook in Angular. It runs automatically after Angular creates the component and initializes its data. So it's kind of a constructor itself, because constructor also runs automatically while creating the component, right? So but there is a difference between a constructor and a ng on init, which is a lifecycle hook. So you can think of it like a constructor that waits for Angular to finish setting up the component before running some code, right? So let's see the difference between the constructor and the ng on init. So by this example, you should be able to understand what is the exact difference between a constructor and the ng on init. So let's take an example of a TV again. Okay, constructor. So in example of a TV, so when the television is manufactured, at that time, when a TV is manufactured, at that time your constructor gets executed, whereas this ng on init gets executed when you buy that TV and you start that TV. That means when you turn on the TV, or when you power on the TV for the first time. So when you power on the TV for the first time, your ng on it gets executed. Fine. So I hope that you have now understood the difference between having a constructor and having a ng on init. So ng on init will be executed the moment your component is being executed for the first time. And when are you going to make use of this ng on init? So ng on init is a very useful lifecycle hook. If you want to call an API to fetch the data whenever the component is loaded, at that time you can go for a ng on init. Or when you want to initialize the variables, you can make use of ng on init. When you want to fetch values from services, at that time you can make use of this ng on init. Okay, so when you want to prepare data for templates and all, in that case your ng on init will be used. I hope that this lifecycle hook ng on init is pretty much clear to you. So once we have understood this ng on init stuff, let's now talk about the reading of the path variables in this case. So how are we going to read it? So if I didn't have this ng on init, I could have shown you that, but then you will understand why am I showing you this. So I have just created is the ng on init. I'm not yet using it. So what I will do now is, in the constructor, if you remember, I have talked about a service called as ActivatedRoute. So I am taking the ActivatedRoute, but I did not subscribe it, because ActivatedRoute actually uh, provides us a promise. It gives us a promise. So promises has to be subscribed. Okay, so let's understand what is that. Let's call it as read path variables, or let's call it as path params. this is just a user defined function. I'm creating it on my own. So when we want to read the path parameters, we go for this dot activated route dot parameters. All right. So parameters is a promise to which we have to subscribe. So a promise results in two things. One is that you either fulfill the promise or you don't fulfill it. I think I have already talked about this promises in JavaScript. So what could be the result of a promise? It can either be a data or it can be a error. That means either the promise is fulfilled or it is not. So either you end up getting the data or you end up getting a error. So we have to subscribe to this promise, and it returns us the two results. So those two results that we have to track, either a data or a error. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I will just take up the data. uh, that means I'm passing in the callback function, and the callback function what I'm passing in is the first argument. So there can be two arguments, there can be data, there can be error, like this, right? So we know that in Angular it is optional to pass in both the arguments. So in that case, as of now I'm just ignoring the second part while I'm just writing the first part, that is the data. So what I'm doing now is that uh, here I will create a variable, let's call it as user name, and it is an empty variable here. So I'll say whatever variable name, that username variable I have created, so this variable name should actually be the first argument coming from the data. Okay, and what is that first argument coming up from the data? So it is the user ID that I want to trace. So that's what we have to tell our Angular. You read the user ID and store it into the variable called as user name, and that is something which has to be displayed on my home component .html. Okay, so here I want to bind this welcome, sorry, that is username I want to bind. Welcome username is something I'll say welcome username. So let's save everything, and now let us test whether the things gets executed or not. Even obviously it will not be executed. I'll go to the login page first, and I'll provide a valid name admin and admin 123. So admin is somebody who has logged in, it's a valid user, so it just says welcome but it does not read the path parameters. So the reason why the path parameters are not read is that I am writing a function but that function is not executed, right? So that function has to be executed the moment the component is loaded, right? So once I want to execute that function the moment this uh, component is loaded, so I'll call this read path parameters inside the ng on init, right? So if I call this function here, now it will call the admin the moment the component is loaded. So now the component is loaded, it calls welcome admin. Similarly, if suppose I go here and I go for the login once again, and I log in by another user, that is user, and user123 was the password. So when I click on login, so it is the user who has logged in, so it will tell me welcome user. That way you can add the path parameters and you can read the path parameters. So for reading the path parameters, we need to have the activated route service being subscribed in our component. So for that we have to first inject the activated route, and then we have to subscribe to the promise, that is params is the promise for which we are going to subscribe. Okay, so this is something which we will be doing a lot of times, that is subscribing to service methods or service objects, which we will learn in our future tutorials as well. So we will be doing this a lot of times in our HTTP services as well. So let me just share you everything that I have done in this case. So I already configured the app routing, if you remember in the previous example. So in this example, what I've simply done is that I enhanced this login stuff where I added multiple user. I think I've done that in the previous, I have already shared that as well in the previous case, right? So adding path parameters. Let's go, let me just check that. Yeah, I've already done that, so I'll not be sharing you that. So in this example, I'll show you only the updated stuff, that is demo 4 reading path parameters, right? So for reading path parameters, what you have to do is on whichever component you want to read it, that is the home component .typescript is where I wanted to read the path parameters. So it will go to home.typescript, and in the home.typescript I have to read this. For reading this I have to do all these things, right? And then the home.html. In the home.html I have not done anything special. So home.html, and for my videos obviously sometimes it takes more than half an hour and all, but to explain you the concept it definitely takes time. So you do not worry about the time. You have to spend the quality time, because these are the concepts that are a very advanced concept that requires time for uh, explaining. Fine. I cannot just create a 5-minute video or a 2-minute video to explain you these complicated concepts. So you also have to spend time to learn this. Fine. So as I tell you, learning Java in 1 hour or learning Angular in 1 hour, they are all myth. You cannot do that. So you have to spend time. It takes time to build a monument, right? Alright, so this is how you read the parameters. If you have more than one parameter, you can configure more than one parameter, and you can read more than one parameters as well. So in this, in the next example, I'll try to go for configuring more than one parameter and reading more than one parameter. So let's see how do we do that. So obviously the path parameters are added in login. So I'll go to the login.typescript, and in the login.typescript, what I'm gonna do is I will read the username as well as the password for this example. Fine. So I'll say comma, or else I'll just read what test admin will be something which I'll read for the admin, and for a normal user it will be what comma my user data. Okay, so that is the second path argument which I want to read from here. So this is done. So adding path parameter requires what? You have to add it in the login TypeScript. That means with navigate you configure your routes accordingly to accept more than one. So here if I want to configure this to accept more than one, once again I have to put a forward slash, then colon, and then give the path parameter name. So in this case I'll call it as password or pass or anything. Fine. So adding path parameter is done. That is two things we have to do. In the navigate function we have to add it, and in the route configuration we have to add it. Now we have to just read it. So reading, we know that it is done in home.typescript and home.html. So let's go to the home.typescript and home.html to achieve that. So home.typescript here. So I have to subscribe to that second parameter as well, which is gonna be let's create another variable which holds that. So let's call it as password or something. It's not a password, but I'm just writing it as password, or let's call it as second argument. Okay, second parameter or second argument or whatever it is. So this dot second argument will be equal to data of what? Data of pass. What is this pass? This pass is something which I have actually provided in here. That's the name of the path parameter. Okay, so that will be read and it will be stored into the second argument, and that has to be displayed to me. Welcome user, the second path param is second argument. So let's save everything and test whether the second argument is also read or not. So I will go to login now, and here I will type in user 123. That's a valid user. Let's say login says valid user, and it says home works welcome user. That's the first path parameter, and the second path parameter is my user data. So that is something which I have added for the user. If you want, you can see that here. Fine. So for a user, it is my user data. If I logged in with admin, it shows me test admin. Fine. So let's do that. So admin 123. So it shows me first argument as invalid user, so it is admin. Okay, so valid user shows me first argument as admin, the second path parameter is test admin. So that way you can add up more than one argument as well. So let me once again share you this more than one path parameter. First of all, you have to add it in login. So let me call this as demo 5. Demo 5 multiple path params. So first thing, add the path parameter in login.typescript. This is where I'm adding more than one path parameter. Second is I have to configure the app-routing module.typescript, where we have to configure our app routing in such a way to accept more than one argument. So this is where I am doing that. And lastly, we have to read it and display it. So we are reading it in home.typescript. So let's go to home component.typescript. This is where I'm reading it by subscribing to the arguments. And lastly, in the home.html, I'm displaying that. So it will be home.html. All right. Okay, so I actually wanted to explain the route guard also in this session, but in the next session we will continue it, as I think this session is already more than half an hour. So some of you might not focus for that long, but then the video length would be too much. So in the next session I'll be talking about the route guards, and that will again be a very interesting part. How are you going to protect your routes from being accessed, right? So I hope that the concept about navigate function, that is programmatically navigating to a component and providing in the path parameters, is clear to you. And if you are liking in the series, please share the series with your friends, earn me more subscribers so that it motivates me to create more such content for you. Thank you, see you in the next video.